A few days ago, I took to Twitter to ask you for your Fallout questions. I've always been curious about what people think about Fallout and the various things that they may have missed or like to know about the game series that I might be able to fill in the blanks with, and I got some good ones. This is something that I'd like to do on the channel often if people are into the idea, so let's take a look at what was asked. The first one we're looking at is from Likely Frogtails, and he asks, is there ever a reason explained as to why Marcus had to leave Broken Hills? As you can see from my response, Marcus didn't have to leave Broken Hills, but he chose to do so once he met the Chosen One because they discovered an anti-mutant conspiracy group, and these people were looking to purge all of the mutants from Broken Hills. Obviously, being a mutant, Marcus wasn't too keen on that, though the Chosen One and Marcus eventually stop this situation if the Chosen One chooses to. Marcus decides that it's probably better if he just ventures off into the wasteland with the Chosen One to see what adventures or things he could help them with along the way. Of course, we find out in Fallout New Vegas that Marcus eventually founds Jacobstown, and the rest is history. But he never really had to leave Broken Hills, he just kind of felt like he needed to. Now we go to Seamus, who asks, I'm curious about the ghost people and overall how the Fallout universe has such good food preservation technology. When it comes to the ghost people that we encounter in Dead Money at the Sierra Madre, these were construction workers that were working on the Sierra Madre for Sinclair. There was a gas leak that would later become what we see the Cloud as being in the various areas in the Sierra Madre. These workers were poisoned by the gas, again, which eventually became the Cloud, and that's what they became over time, as these ghost people. And they wander the Sierra Madre looking to destroy, I guess, anything that comes within its path, protecting what they once built. When it comes to food preservation, we know from the real world that it's entirely possible to keep things in a can and some box foods for months and months at a time. These will stay edible, we're able to cook them and eat them out of those things, and it's all good to go. But like Seamus says, in the Fallout universe, we see cram and potatoes and things of that nature, in boxes, of course, these preserved foods, these processed foods that are stored that way. But 200 years later, 300 years later, people are able to, they're not only still edible, but it actually provides some kind of nutrients to the body because we get healed from them and things of that nature. Still, there's one thing to remember about the Fallout timeline that isn't necessarily going on with ours, and it's the Sino-American War. When this war takes place and China and the United States are rearing up because of resources, the soldiers on the front lines and everybody involved in the wars, they need long-lasting food, and in the Fallout universe, food preservation was pushed to be able to apparently last this long. Not only do we see it with the Sino-American War, but also coming into the Resource Wars, which I mean, it's essentially the same thing, but the Resource Wars represent a bigger conflict that eventually ends with the Great War, with the nuclear exchange between China and the US at least. But we see all of this happening. The food that is then able to feed NCR soldiers 200, 300 years later, it's because of this preservation technology that was advanced because of all of this global fighting that we're able to have food that lasts that long in the Fallout universe. The next question we have is from Janitorial Services, and they ask, did the Outcast take over the DC Brotherhood? I remember someone saying that they did, and that's why they're back to their xenophobic, I'm guessing, ways. And I can't find out myself because I can't run Fallout 4 due to my laptop not being beefy enough. Anyone with experience in the Fallout series, especially Fallout 3, will likely notice that the Brotherhood in the Commonwealth is a bit different than the one that we found in the Capital Wasteland. They definitely harbor the same views that we see in the Fallout 1 and 2 Brotherhood from Lost Hills. They're much more similar to that than they are of their counterparts in Fallout 3. And maybe that is probably why people think, oh, the Outcasts took over. But it's not quite the case. What happened is, after the events of Fallout 3, Maxon, once he took control, or at least during his period of becoming an elder, becoming the leader of the Brotherhood, they brokered a peace deal with the Outcasts. Outcasts probably agreed to this peace deal because of how hardcore they are to the Brotherhood's core values, or at least what they're conceptualizing as the Brotherhood's core values. They have been tweaked a bit since Lost Hills, but like I said, it's a lot more inclusive. Though the Brotherhood still kind of welcomes you with open arms in Fallout 4, a far cry from what they did in Fallout 1. But still, I do understand why people may think that the Outcast got some kind of leadership position, but in fact they were just reintegrated back into the normal Brotherhood. The next question comes from Jeff Techno Loremaster. Are the Enclave the deep state? For me, it's always made sense, but I'd figured I'd ask you. Well, Jeff, at the end of the development of the first Fallout, a new team was brought in to start making Fallout 2, and during this time it was discussed what the Enclave were doing, what their actual purpose was. And the Enclave decided that they were going to build this starship. They were going to build this big rocket ship to get them off the planet, be sustained for a couple hundred years, maybe find a new home planet, but at least be away from what was going on down there. And this included top officials in the US government, as well as the military that we see more prevalently in the Fallout series. The Enclave did face some problems though. They knew how to build this starship. They could get it off the ground. They could get it into outer space, but they didn't know how to sustain life that long. They didn't know what was going to happen when they got a couple hundred people on this ship, up to 1,000 people on this ship. They didn't know what was going to go down, so they needed to find out. They needed to figure out what they needed for this starship, and it was a long con experiment that they were going to be doing that would take hundreds of years for them to actually collect the data. So they contracted a team, a company that was building underground vaults in the United States. Vault-Tec. Vault-Tec was going to host enough vaults to hold about 1 million people in the United States. Each vault would hold about 1,000 people, and the Enclave saw this as an opportunity to test the things that they needed. They needed to know about cryostasis to keep people up there in that starship and keep them preserved for a couple hundred years maybe. So they needed to know how that would work. They needed to know about food preservation and food production as well. They needed to know about different social dissonance things that may come up. If any of this is sounding familiar, maybe it's because you may have seen some of these Vault-Tec experiments going on in vaults that we uncover in the Fallout universe. And these are used to not just test the society that's in the vault for no reason. They're used to give the Enclave data to help them build this starship that they're going to then take off from the planet and find a home elsewhere. They're going to build a new utopia up among the stars, but they need this data from Vault-Tec in order to get everything up to code, up to the standard that it needs to be to sustain such a thing. So that's why we see not only the Vault experiments, but we also have the Enclave's involvement with Vault-Tec. So are they the deep state? If that's your definition of the deep state, absolutely. I would say a bit yes, especially post-apocalyptic, but even going back further a bit yes, because we have top officials in the US government, the president even, just there's a lot of stuff going on with that. So short answer, yes. Long answer, everything I just said before. The next question comes from Chaos Chronicler. Are vertibirds fusion-fueled or gas-fueled? I have found nothing on this other than supposedly VB01s being gas-powered, and even that is strange given the fact that the resource wars showed how scarce it is, or the fact everything was switching to fusion power. As odd as it sounds, it seems vertibirds are fueled by gas, or at least some type of fuel that isn't fusion. In Fallout New Vegas, we can talk to Daisy Whitman after doing the Arcade Gannon Enclave Remnants quest. And when we do so, we can ask her, hey, what was it like flying vertibirds for the Enclave? And she actually directly references fuel in her response.
I was never happier than when I was in the cockpit. I was able to go just about anywhere and everywhere, limited only by the fuel I could carry. There were more than a few missions where I took the scenic route home just so I could stay in the air. Caught hell for it every time, but worth it. Some of the things we did were questionable, I know. That's just how it was back then. Figure I've done enough good to make up for any sins, anyhow.
Now, Bethesda's been known to do a retcon or two, but even in Fallout 4, when a vertibird is destroyed, we don't see the typical mushroom cloud, nuclear explosion that we see with other things that we know are fusion powered and know have nuclear reactors in them. It just explodes, I guess you could say normally, but like a standard combustion explosion. Judging off of these two bits of evidence, I'm going to say that they are gas fueled or, combustion fueled, that kind of situation instead of fusion powered, just based on the fact that they don't have that big explosion that we see with other things in Fallout 4, and Daisy Whitman, a pilot of vertibirds for the Enclave. The Enclave, if anybody's going to have access to actual gas, it's going to be the Enclave. She directly says all the fuel that she could carry or whatever. So to me, that's going to point at more of a gas-fueled situation. And that is going to do it for my question video from Twitter. I plan on doing this again, but I wanted to give it a little test, so only grabbed a few questions this time. I got almost 100 of them, over 100 of them, something like that. So I'm definitely down to make more videos based on those questions and to post some more to get questions from other platforms as well. Post on YouTube, Instagram and Twitter or whatever, and see what you guys are curious about with the Fallout series, and if I can answer it based on my experience. Of course I can do a little bit of research, but everybody can do a little bit of research and Google things or something of that nature, but it's really fun to try to pull from what I remember from the games or what I remember being the case, and then maybe fact check that and go forward. Especially with the harder ones that aren't necessarily just answered online through a search, or even opinion ones. I got a lot of people asking my opinion about things. I'll probably put those into the next video, more integrated with basic lore questions. Regardless, thank you very much for checking out the video. Thank you to everybody who's a YouTube member, and I look forward to getting some video essays out for you soon and getting some live streams going as well. I'll catch you on the next one. It has been Mantis.